Welcome, brave souls, to a tale of shadows and secrets where the line between the living and the dead blurs beneath ancient ruins. Before we begin, let me ask, where are you listening from right now, and what time is it in your part of the world? Please leave your answers in the comments below. I'm curious to know. Tonight, we embark on a journey deep into the heart of mystery, a place forgotten by time, yet haunted by the echoes of a deadly curse. Prepare yourself for a story of exploration, peril, and the thin thread that binds hope to despair. This is the story of the expedition that dared to challenge the darkness and the fate that awaited them. This is Whispers from the Cursed Depths. The rain tapped against the windows of Lucas Reinhardt's study like skeletal fingers begging to be let in. Outside, Munich was drowning in October gloom, the sky the color of old bruises. Inside, the faint smell of old books and burnt coffee lingered in the cramped room. Lucas, mid-30s, with tired eyes and a streak of silver in his otherwise dark hair, sat hunched over a yellowed map of Eastern Europe. He wasn't just a historian. He was a folklorist, obsessed with the obscure, the forbidden, the forgotten. And for the past 6 months, he had been chasing whispers, references in crumbling manuscripts, mentions in folk songs, and the frightened silences of elderly villagers, about a place called Valahia Neagra, the Black Valahia. Most dismissed it as a myth, a monastery swallowed by the forest sometime in the 15th century, erased from maps and memory. But Lucas believed it was real, and now he had proof. The envelope arrived with no return address, sealed with red wax bearing a strange sigil, 3 eyes arranged in a triangle. The letter inside was handwritten in elegant, slanted English. Dr. Reinhardt, if you still seek the truth about Valahia Neagra, join us. On the 3rd of November, meet at the old station in Brașov, Romania. Bring what you need. This is not an academic expedition. We will wait until midnight. After that, we enter the forest. You are not the only one searching. Lucas read the letter 5 times before folding it carefully and sliding it into his coat pocket. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he stared at the old map, eyes locked on a shaded patch of the Carpathian Mountains, marked only with faded ink and a whisper of legend. He wasn't afraid, not yet. The train ride to Romania took 2 days, filled with long silences, rain-smeared windows, and the dull ache of anticipation. Lucas spent the hours rereading field notes and revisiting accounts of the monastery's last days. One chronicler claimed the monks invited the sky to close its eyes with their final rites. Another spoke of chanting that turned rivers to rot. Brașov was a city of crooked roofs, fog-drenched alleys, and eyes that watched too long. At the old station, under a flickering lantern, a woman was waiting. "Dr. Reinhardt?" she asked in perfect German, her accent tinged with something older. Lucas nodded. "You must be Elena," she finished. "Your guide. You're the last to arrive." Behind her stood a black military-style truck. Inside were the others, 8 men and women, each stranger than the last. There was Marcello, an Italian documentarian with eyes too bright for someone who claimed he didn't believe in ghosts. Sophie, a French forensic pathologist, who said little but recorded everything. Tomasz, a Polish botanist whose backpack clinked with vials of glowing green liquid. Others were introduced, but names blurred in Lucas's mind. All of them had seen something. All of them were chasing shadows. As the truck rumbled into the night, the city faded into mist behind them. The forest loomed ahead, black and motionless. At camp that night, someone brought out whiskey. They sat around a dim fire in the clearing just outside the forest line. Stories were shared in low voices. 3 expeditions have tried to find the monastery, said Marcello. Only one returned. One man. He killed himself 2 weeks later, and yet here we are, Sophie murmured. Lucas stayed quiet. He was listening. At midnight, The wind changed. The fire dimmed, and somewhere in the woods a bell rang once, deep and low, like it had traveled across centuries to reach them. Elena stood up. "Tomorrow we enter. No turning back after this." Lucas looked toward the trees. Something moved between them. Too tall, too thin, and far too silent. For the first time, fear whispered in his ear. The morning air in the Carpathians was unnaturally still. No bird song, no rustling leaves, just the weight of silence. Lucas tightened the straps on his pack, his breath visible in the cold mist that curled along the forest floor like a living thing. The group assembled in silence, each person avoiding eye contact, as if afraid their gaze might give form to something lurking just beyond the trees. Elena led them in single file down a nearly invisible trail. The path was ancient, swallowed by roots and overgrown moss, but someone, or something, had walked it recently. Lucas noticed faint boot prints in the soft earth. Fresh, they walked for hours. The deeper they went, the thicker the air felt, not in heat, but in presence. Trees leaned inward, like eavesdropping giants. The light dimmed even though the sun still hung above them. Thomas, the botanist, murmured, "These plants shouldn't grow here. This moss, it's parasitic but somehow feeding on nothing." He collected a sample and sealed it in a jar. The moss inside twitched. By midday, they reached what Elena called the first marker, a series of standing stones carved with symbols none of them recognized. Sophie took photos. Lucas ran his fingers over the weathered runes. They felt warm. "It's not Latin," he whispered. "Not Slavic either." "No," Elena said without turning. "It's older, from the time before language had names." Beyond the stones, the trail ended. Before them stood a wall of fog so thick it seemed solid. Elena didn't hesitate. She stepped through and vanished. Marcello swore in Italian. Sophie followed Elena without a word. One by one, the others crossed. Lucas hesitated. Something in his chest, instinct, maybe memory, screamed at him to turn back. But he stepped forward. The cold hit like water. The fog clung to his skin, to his thoughts. For a moment, he couldn't see, hear, or feel anything. Then he emerged on the other side. It was darker here. The trees were wrong, twisted, bark like flesh, branches arched like limbs in pain. The light was sickly green, as if filtered through diseased leaves. The silence was complete, and yet Lucas felt observed. The group reassembled slowly, shaken. Elena nodded. "We've crossed the boundary. We are now inside the perimeter of Valahia Neagra." "How far is the monastery?" someone asked. "Distance doesn't work here," Elena replied. "It could be hours, or days, or longer," Marcello muttered. "Fantastic." They continued deeper. That evening they made camp near a stream that smelled faintly of iron. The fire didn't burn right. Its light barely reached beyond the circle of stones Elena arranged around them. Lucas sat beside Sophie as she reviewed footage. "Look," she whispered, pointing at a frame. In the corner of one shot, just behind Tomasz, was a figure. Tall, pale, barely visible, but definitely not one of them. "No one noticed it during the day," Sophie said. "Do we tell the others?" Lucas asked. Sophie closed the laptop slowly. "No, not yet." That night, Lucas dreamed of chanting in a language he didn't know, of a woman with black eyes and no mouth, and of a bell that never stopped ringing. When he woke, the fire was dead, and Tomasz was gone. Moonlight filtered through the twisted canopy like pale fingers, illuminating the clearing where the group awoke to an unsettling calm. The absence of Tomasz was the first indication that something had gone terribly wrong in the night. Packs were unzipped, flashlights flicked on, and one by one they found the small jar of glowing moss, shattered on the ground, its contents smeared across damp soil. Lucas knelt, inspecting the shattered glass. "He couldn't have left on his own," he murmured. The others gathered around, faces pale in the greenish glow of their torches. Elena's voice was steady but quiet. We split up to search. Sophie, Marcello, you take the western edge. I'll go north with Lucas. The rest circle back toward the camp. Sophie nodded, though her eyes betrayed a trembling doubt. Marcello adjusted his camera, as if determined to capture proof of the night's horrors. Lucas shouldered his pack, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on him. They moved swiftly through gnarled roots and behorned branches, calling Tomasz's name into the silence. No answer came, only the distant drip of water and the hushed rustle of leaves. At the edge of a shallow ravine, Sophie's flashlight caught a flash of white. "It's his jacket," she whispered, pointing. The torn fabric was snagged on a branch, coarse fibers stained red. Lucas swore under his breath. He scrambled down the ravine, heart pounding, and found a scene that struck him mute. On a bed of moss lay Tomasz's body, pale as death itself, limbs at impossible angles. His eyes, wide open, seemed to stare into a void beyond the forest. No sign of struggle, no footprints leading away, only the broken vial and a smear of greenish fluid. Sophie knelt beside the corpse, pulling on latex gloves. Time of death, maybe 3 or 4 hours ago. His face, it's like he was suffocating, she said, voice quivering. Lucas felt bile rise. "We need to get back to camp," he said. Everyone, as they hurried upward, a low chanting drifted through the trees. It was faint at first, overlapping voices in a language lost to time, but crescendoing with each step. The chant seemed to come from every direction at once, filling the forest with a living darkness. When they reached the clearing, Elena and 2 others, Petra, a Czech geologist, and Ibrahim, an Egyptian cryptologist, were already there. Their faces were tight with fear. "Elena," Lucas said, breathless. "It's Tomasz. He's dead." Elena closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with resolve. "We knew someone wouldn't make it. The question now is, who's next, and why?" By headlamp, they arranged Tomasz's body on a flat stone. Sophie covered his still form with a blanket, but Lucas could not look away from the blank eyes. He could almost hear Tomasz's voice whispering secrets of the cursed land. They performed a quick ritual, something Elena had learned from her grandfather's journals, meant to protect the living from the dead. A circle of salt, a whispered prayer in ancient Romanian, and a final stroke along the chest. "I hope it works," Petra said, voice hollow. Night deepened. The chanting continued, surrounding them like a living thing. At last, Elena called for silence. "We move at first light. We find the monastery, or die trying." Lucas lay awake by the dying embers, mind racing. He recalled the runes they'd seen at the first marker. He thought of the bell that had tolled at midnight. He thought of Tomasz's lifeless eyes as he drifted into a restless half-sleep. In his dreams, the forest spoke to him. It showed him a ruined chapel, its doors sealed with iron chains. It showed him monks with 3 eyes carved into their foreheads. It showed him a book bound in human skin, pages written in blood. He awoke to a scream. Petra was standing over Marcello, who lay clutching his throat, eyes bulging. Foam bubbled at the corner of his mouth. Sophie and Ibrahim knelt beside him, frantic, while Elena dropped to her knees and pressed an ear to his chest. "He's convulsing," Elena said. Something crawled inside him. Marcello's body twisted, as if caught in a net of pain, until his head snapped back. Then he went perfectly still. Sophie checked his pulse. "He's gone." A second body. 2 deaths before dawn. Lucas looked skyward through the skeletal branches, his voice barely audible. "This place wants us dead." Silence answered. Dawn broke reluctantly, bleeding cold light through a gray sky that hung low over the forest like a suffocating shroud. No birds sang, no wind stirred. The air felt thick, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. The group buried Marcello beside Tomasz, marking the graves with a pair of stones carved with crude symbols. An improvised gesture, more desperate than sacred. Sophie lit a candle and placed it at their feet. It flickered, then guttered out in an unseen draft. "We need to keep moving," Elena said quietly, her eyes shadowed by fatigue and sorrow. "We're being watched. This place knows we're here." Lucas glanced into the trees. Shadows shifted unnaturally. The roots beneath his boots felt warmer than they should, almost like veins. The group packed in silence. 5 now remained: Elena, Lucas, Sophie, Petra, and Ibrahim. What had begun as an expedition of curiosity had become a race for survival. They moved quickly, following the narrowing path deeper into the woods. After an hour, the terrain changed. The trees leaned closer, as if eavesdropping, and the underbrush twisted in symmetrical patterns. Petra muttered, "This geometry. It's wrong. It's too perfect. Nothing in nature grows like this." Suddenly, Ibrahim stopped. "Look," he said, pointing to a stone altar in a shallow hollow, half swallowed by roots. They approached cautiously. The altar was ancient, carved with symbols none of them recognized. Rings inside triangles, jagged spirals, and what looked like a humanoid figure with multiple eyes. The top was stained dark, long ago and often. Lucas brushed his fingers over the carvings. "It's not just ceremonial," he murmured. "This was used. Recently, a cold breeze circled them despite the still air." Sophie's hair lifted. From behind the altar, a low murmur began, like someone whispering just out of sight. They froze. "Elena," Petra said. "Do you hear that?" Elena nodded, eyes wide. "It's the same voice from the dream I had last night." The whisper grew louder. Words in no known language, layered like echoes in a cavern. Then it stopped, abruptly, as if sucked into the earth. Lucas walked slowly behind the altar, drawn by instinct more than thought. He pushed aside a curtain of moss and uncovered a staircase, descending into the dark. "A crypt?" Sophie guessed. "Or a chapel," Ibrahim replied. "A place of initiation, maybe. Or sacrifice," Lucas muttered. They debated, but in the end, the need for answers outweighed the fear. One by one, they descended into the damp stairwell, torches flickering as the temperature dropped sharply. The air smelled of stone and old blood. The stairway ended at a massive circular chamber, walls covered in frescoes of robed figures offering gifts to a towering horned shape, surrounded by concentric rings of fire and eyes. In the center, another altar, this one cleaner, newer. On it lay a book bound in cracked, blackened leather. Elena reached for it. The others watched with held breath. As her fingers touched the cover, the whispering returned, this time inside their minds. "You have opened what should stay buried." Sophie screamed and dropped her torch. The flame sputtered, then roared, as if feeding on something unseen. Petra backed toward the wall, eyes wide in disbelief. Lucas grabbed Elena's wrist. "Don't open it," he said. "This isn't knowledge. It's infection." But Elena's eyes were glazed over. She opened the book. A blast of invisible force flung them backward. The chamber shook. Frescoes cracked. From the ceiling above, something dripped. Dark, viscous. Elena stood at the center, her lips moving in rhythm with a voice not her own. The book glowed from within, symbols rearranging like writhing insects. Her voice echoed with dozens layered atop hers. "It's not her," Ibrahim said, trembling. "It's something inside her." Lucas crawled forward. "Elena, stop. Fight it." But she looked up, and her eyes had turned black. Lucas froze as Elena turned to face him, her pupils now fully eclipsed by an unnatural void. Bottomless, cold, and hungry. Her lips moved again, whispering words that no one recognized, but that every bone in their bodies understood were never meant to be spoken by humans. "She's possessed," Sophie choked out, backing away, her voice barely a whisper. "No," Petra murmured. gripping the torch tightly. She's not possessed. She's merging. Elena took a step forward. The book in her hands pulsed with a low, steady thrum like a second heartbeat. Symbols shifted across its surface in real time, alive and watching. Lucas stood his ground. "Elena," he said slowly, gently, "if you can hear me, fight it. You're stronger than this. Don't let it in." But her voice replied, layered, ancient. "The gates have opened. The Watchers remember their names. And so will you." Then the walls began to bleed. From the frescoes, the robed figures began to move. Slowly, subtly, like film peeling into life. Eyes that had once been pigment on stone blinked. Hands twitched. One figure's jaw unhinged, and a silent scream bled into the chamber. Sophie dropped to her knees, clutching her head. "I hear them inside," she sobbed. "Too many voices. They're crawling under my skin." Ibrahim rushed to her, shielding her with his body. "We have to get out, now!" But the stairway behind them was no longer there. In its place was a wall, smooth and seamless. "We're trapped," Petra said. The altar behind Elena cracked open like a mouth. From it rose a misty black tendril, shimmering, sentient, and hungry. It reached toward Elena's back, stroking her like a lover. She did not flinch. Lucas turned to the others. "Distraction. Now, we need to break the book's connection to her." "How?" Petra asked, panicking. "I don't know. Burn it. Smash it. Anything." As Lucas lunged forward, the black mist hissed, striking out like a snake. It caught him in midair and flung him across the room. He hit the wall hard, sliding down, coughing blood. Petra grabbed a burning torch and hurled it at the book. The fire touched the leather cover and shrieked. The flame turned blue, then black, then vanished completely as though consumed. The book was feeding. Elena began levitating slowly, her feet no longer touching the stone floor. Her mouth opened impossibly wide, and from it spilled a guttural chant, echoing, rising, shaking the chamber. Sophie screamed again. Petra dragged her to the corner. "Now!" Ibrahim roared, running toward Elena with a pickaxe from his pack. He swung. The moment the blade struck the book, the sound in the room vanished. Then came the blast. The chamber exploded in light, white, searing, blinding. A deafening howl shook the forest above. The stone beneath their feet cracked, the frescoes shattered into dust, and Elena fell. She dropped like a puppet whose strings were suddenly cut. The book clattered beside her, now dark, dead, and cracked. Lucas crawled over to her, her eyes normal, her breathing shallow. "But there, she's alive," he whispered. But something left with that explosion. They turned to the altar. The black mist was gone. The walls were bare. The voices silenced. But no one celebrated, because carved into the floor, newly revealed beneath the shattered dust, was a fresh symbol, a warning, an eye, crying blood, ringed in ancient runes. Beneath it, in perfect Latin, "Quod est excitatus, non iterum dormiet." That which has been awakened will not sleep again. The survivors sat in silence around the dying campfire, the flames licking low against the damp wood. Above them, the forest whispered, quiet but ever-present. The energy had shifted. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. Elena lay wrapped in a thermal blanket, her face pale, skin clammy. She hadn't spoken since the explosion in the chamber. Her eyes fluttered now and then, as if trapped between sleep and some deeper realm. "She's burning up," Sophie whispered, holding a damp cloth to Elena's forehead. "But there's no fever. Her temperature's dropping, actually." Lucas stirred the fire. "She's not in a coma. She's somewhere else. Do you think part of her is still down there?" Petra asked quietly. They didn't answer. The question hung in the air like a curse. Ibrahim kept watch by the edge of the clearing, pickaxe in hand, eyes fixed on the dark beyond the trees. No one dared venture far from the firelight. Not after what they saw. Not after the thing they heard whispering behind stone. "Should we burn the book?" Sophie asked. Lucas hesitated. "We can't. Not yet." "Why not?" "Because it's not just a book. It's a key, and we need to know what it opens." Before anyone could respond, a howl echoed through the forest. Not a wolf's. Something deeper. Older. Sophie clutched Elena tighter. "That wasn't an animal." Ibrahim stood, scanning the woods. "Eyes, right there." They all looked. In the darkness between the trees, reflections. Low to the ground, unmoving. Watching. "Don't move," Petra whispered. The eyes vanished. Silence. Then rustling, all around. The group formed a circle, backs to each other. Torches lit. Branches snapped to the north. Then to the west. Then to the south. Something was testing their perimeter. Elena sat up suddenly, eyes wide. "Don't let it take the book," she gasped. "Elena?" Lucas knelt beside her. Her lips moved fast. Too fast. A different tongue. Then in English. "They're not outside. They're under us. They're listening." The ground trembled faintly. And from the darkness came the whisper, "One is opened. 4 remain." The group turned toward the voice, but there was nothing. Just the trees. Still. Breathing. A low hum filled the air, vibrating their bones. Petra dropped her torch. The flame went out instantly. Then the trees bent inward. A shape stepped into the clearing, not fully human, not fully shadow. It moved like smoke, limbs wrong, neck too long. Where its face should be, only darkness, swirling. Lucas held up the book. "Is this what you want?" The thing tilted its head. "Elena!" Sophie screamed. She convulsed violently, then stopped. She stood slowly and looked the creature in the eyes. "It's not done with me," she said. "I'm its conduit." "Elena!" "No," she snapped. "Don't touch me." The creature took one step closer. "Tell it to go," Lucas pleaded. "Tell it to leave us alone." "I can't," she whispered. "It's already inside all of us now." The creature raised a hand, then pointed to Ibrahim. He staggered back, breath freezing. "No," he whispered. "No, not me." The creature vanished, and Ibrahim screamed. His skin turned gray. Veins bulged black beneath his flesh. He dropped to his knees, gasping. His mouth opened, but no words came, only smoke. And then he collapsed, dead. Elena dropped to her knees beside him, trembling. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "It chose." Lucas clutched the book tight. "What is it choosing for?" "Hosts," Elena whispered. "It's waking up, and it needs bodies." By dawn, the forest had grown quiet again, as though nothing had happened. But the campfire was cold, and Ibrahim's body lay still, wrapped in a tarp near the edge of the clearing. No one slept. Lucas sat with the ancient book in his lap, staring at a newly revealed page, one that hadn't been there before. The text shifted when he blinked, rearranging symbols as though reacting to his presence. "What does it say now?" Petra asked, voice hoarse. Lucas ran a hand through his hair. "It's a map, a path. I think it shows where the other seals are." Sophie stepped closer, frowning. "And that's supposed to help us how? Every time we go near one, someone dies." "We can't leave," Elena said from her bedroll, voice low but steady. "It won't let us. And even if we did, it would follow. It's bound to us now." Silence. Petra took the book and examined the drawing. The path curved like a serpent through jagged symbols and spirals. At several points there were figures, glyphs of people bowing or burning or splitting in two. "It's not just a map," she whispered. "It's a story, and the ending hasn't been written yet." They decided to move again before nightfall. By late afternoon, they were deep into the western hills beyond the forest. The terrain had changed, rockier with less canopy above. The air smelled metallic. Somewhere nearby, water trickled through stones, but they saw no stream. They followed the map to a rise in the ground, a mound covered in ash-colored moss. At its center was a ring of standing stones. Each stone had crude carvings, some eroded with time, others freshly marked as if by recent hands. "This is it," Lucas said. "The second seal." Elena knelt before one of the stones, running her fingers over the carvings. "This one shows a man offering his shadow." "A sacrifice?" Sophie asked. "No, a division, giving part of yourself to something else." Willingly, Lucas stepped into the center of the ring. Immediately, the air grew heavier. Petra flinched. "Do you feel that?" The world darkened, not as if the sun had set, but like a curtain had fallen over their senses. Then the sound began. Like distant chanting, not from any throat, but from the ground itself. Vibrations underfoot, rhythmless and dreadful. The second seal began to glow. Lines of faint red light crept along the carvings. Lucas fell to his knees. "Elena," he gasped, "it's pulling something from me." She rushed toward him. "Let it take what it needs, but not too much." The seal pulsed. Lucas screamed. Then silence. The light vanished. Lucas lay still, but breathing. The group rushed to him. His eyes fluttered open slowly. "I saw it," he whispered. "A city, beneath stone, and eyes that never blink." "Is the seal broken?" Petra asked. Lucas reached out, pointing behind them. The ground cracked. A stone slab, long buried, slid aside with an ancient groan. Beneath it, stairs leading down, not carved by human hands. The air that rushed out was cold and sweet, like breath from a long dead mouth. Sophie covered her nose. "We're really doing this, huh?" "We have to," Elena said. "We're not breaking seals to free it. We're breaking them to trap it again." Petra looked at her. "You're sure?" Elena nodded. "The book changed. It's guiding us to close the ancient gate. But it needs us, alive, until the last moment. And after..." She didn't answer. They stared at the steps. Below waited secrets that didn't want to be found. The stairway into the earth spiraled downward, cut from obsidian black stone that shimmered faintly even in the absence of light. It felt older than language, older than memory. Lucas took the lead, still pale and shaky after the ordeal at the seal. Their flashlights barely cut the gloom. The deeper they descended, the more their beams seemed to be swallowed by the air, like the darkness itself had weight. "How far down does this go?" Petra muttered, her voice echoing oddly. "No idea," said Elena. "But it doesn't feel human-made. These stairs, they weren't meant for us." Sophie stayed close to the back, glancing over her shoulder often. "Feels like we're being followed." They descended for what felt like hours. Then, abruptly, the stairs ended in a vast underground chamber. The ceiling arched high above them, lost in shadow. Along the walls were carvings, hundreds of them, depicting strange figures with elongated limbs, eyes like voids, and hands raised toward the sky. Some scenes showed sacrifice, others, communion. One mural showed a giant figure standing over a city while people knelt in worship. In the center of the room stood a massive stone altar covered in bone dust and old, brittle feathers. Behind it loomed an open doorway framed in silver and onyx. Sophie stepped forward, then stopped. "Do you hear that?" They all did. A soft hum like thousands of whispering mouths. From the silver frame something pulsed, a presence. Cold, curious, watching. Lucas approached the altar. On its surface lay a strange object, a dagger made of glass and iron, humming with residual heat. He picked it up carefully. The blade was etched with the same symbols as the book. "Looks like a key," he said. Petra was studying the carvings again. "No, it's more than that. It's a tool. It binds things." Elena stepped toward the silver doorway, her face blank. "Elena," Sophie called out. But Elena didn't respond. She stood in front of the frame, swaying slightly. Then her body convulsed. Lucas dropped the dagger and rushed to her. "Get back!" Elena collapsed. The whisper stopped. Silence returned to the chamber. Lucas held her head. Her eyes were wide, unseeing, but her lips moved. "What is she saying?" Sophie whispered. He leaned in. Elena's voice was thin, barely audible. "It sees us. It wants. The last gate." Then she gasped, and her body relaxed. She was still breathing, but something had changed. "She's not alone anymore," Petra said grimly. They carried her away from the frame and laid her beside the altar. The others sat in silence, the dagger placed between them, glowing faintly. Lucas looked around. "This is the first door." "Out of how many?" Sophie asked. Lucas pointed to the carvings. 7. Elena stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, but they were no longer the same. Her irises shimmered faintly silver, like light on water, and when she spoke, her voice echoed. "It begins." The tension in the underground chamber crackled like static. Elena sat silently by the altar, her eyes blank, lips pressed in a line. Whatever had happened to her by the silver doorway had left her in a trance-like state. Lucas didn't dare speak to her again just yet. Instead, he turned back to the ancient murals on the wall. Petra lit another flare, illuminating more of the chamber. The reddish glow flickered across the carvings. One caught Sophie's eye, hidden in the shadows near the back wall. It showed a figure being marked by something that descended from the sky. A black brand seared into the figure's chest. Around it, others bowed as if they feared the marked one, or worshipped them. "Guys," Sophie said, "look at this." They crowded around. Petra frowned. "That symbol, that's the same as the mark on the dagger." Lucas rubbed his chest uneasy. "It's also familiar. I saw it in my dream, the one I had when we entered the site." Elena suddenly stirred. She stood slowly, her movements jerky. "The first mark," she whispered. "It is given to the vessel. It cannot be refused. It is a curse, and a path." Everyone stared at her. "Elena?" Sophie asked gently. But she wasn't Elena anymore, not entirely. "The mark has chosen one of you," she said. Lucas felt a burning sensation under his shirt. He pulled it up and gasped. On his chest, right over his heart, was a black sigil, freshly branded into his skin. It hadn't been there an hour ago. Sophie covered her mouth. "That's the one from the mural." Lucas staggered back. "What does it mean?" Petra approached him. "Let me look." She touched the edges gently. It wasn't raised. It wasn't a scar. It was alive. Elena nodded solemnly. "He is the bearer now, the guardian of the first key. The mark binds him to the doors. He will either open them or be consumed by them." Lucas sank to the floor, overwhelmed. "I didn't choose this," he muttered. "No," Elena said, "but it chose you." They spent hours resting in the chamber, too afraid to explore further. The silver doorway pulsed faintly in the background, but no one dared approach it again. At one point, Sophie swore she saw a shadow move along the back wall. When she rushed toward it, there was nothing. But the torchlight flickered just once, and the temperature dropped suddenly. Something was listening. As they prepared to leave, Petra sketched the murals, and Lucas rapped his chest. Elena, now speaking in strange intervals, claimed they had to find the second gate before the full moon. "Time is thinning," she said. "The boundary is weak. The more we remain, the more it sees." Sophie glanced back at the silver frame one last time before they began the climb out. She thought she saw something just beyond the threshold, a hand reaching out. But when she blinked, it was gone. The air outside the cavern was thick with silence, but an unsettling feeling lingered in the bones of the explorers. The first mark burned like a curse on Lucas's chest, and the memory of the shadowy hand at the silver doorway haunted their minds. Back in the makeshift camp, Petra paced nervously, examining ancient texts and hastily drawn maps. Sophie sat by the fire, trying to piece together the murals and symbols. Elena remained distant, lost in whispered prayers, as if battling a force invisible to the others. Suddenly, The night cracked with soft whispers, barely audible, yet unmistakable. "Did you hear that?" Sophie asked, eyes wide. Lucas nodded, touching his marked chest. "It's like the shadows are speaking." Petra's voice trembled. "They say the cursed ones are bound to the place forever. The shadows are the voices of those lost, warning us, or perhaps drawing us deeper." As the group debated their next move, strange occurrences multiplied. Items moved slightly when no one was watching, cold spots appeared without explanation, and faint voices murmured from the darkness. Elena approached Lucas and placed a trembling hand on his shoulder. "You must accept your role, Lucas. The mark is not only a curse, it is the key to survival. We must find the next gate quickly." Lucas swallowed hard. The weight of the mark was growing heavier, its darkness whispering dreadful things only he could hear. "We're running out of time," Petra said. "The more we resist, the more the shadows will consume us." That night, Lucas dreamt again. A vision of the ancient gate opening, the spirits crossing over, and a figure cloaked in shadow extending a hand toward him. When dawn broke, the explorers packed their gear, steeling themselves for the descent into the deeper catacombs where the second gate awaited, and where the shadows whispered louder than ever. The path to the second gate led the explorers into the hollow, a vast underground cavern whispered about in local legends but never confirmed by any previous expedition. The air here was thick with a cold dampness, and the faint glow of their torches flickered against slick stone walls that seemed to pulse faintly with a strange, almost organic rhythm. Lucas, marked and trembling, followed Petra closely. Each step echoed ominously, the silence broken only by the dripping of distant water and the soft murmurs of unseen voices. "Stay close," Petra warned. "The hollow is alive, in a way we don't understand yet." Sophie scanned the walls, tracing cryptic symbols that glowed faintly as if responding to their presence. Elena murmured prayers under her breath. Clutching a small amulet she refused to let go. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted. A low rumble shook the cavern, and the explorers froze, their hearts pounding. From the shadows emerged flickers of pale light, ghostly figures drifting between the rock formations. They whispered in an ancient tongue, their voices carrying both sorrow and warning. Lucas's mark burned fiercely, and the shadows seemed drawn to him, swirling faster and louder. Petra raised her voice over the growing chaos. "We must reach the gate before the hollow consumes us." With determination, they pressed forward through the twisting passages, the ghostly chorus growing louder, the air thick with tension. At last, they reached a vast archway carved with scenes of sacrifice and redemption. The second gate stood before them, its surface shimmering like liquid silver. Lucas stepped forward, hand raised. The mark flared brightly, and the gate slowly opened, revealing a corridor leading deeper into the darkness. As they crossed the threshold, the whispers faded, but the feeling of being watched only intensified. The real test was just beginning. Beyond the shimmering gate, the explorers found themselves in a vast chamber unlike anything they had seen before. The walls were covered with intricate carvings that seemed to move in the flickering torchlight, depicting scenes of ancient rituals, lost souls, and a cycle of death and rebirth. The air was thick and heavy. Every step echoed loudly, as if the chamber itself was alive and listening. Strange whispers bounced off the stone, growing louder and more urgent with each passing moment. Lucas felt the mark on his chest pulse painfully, syncing with the rhythm of the chamber. Petra held her breath as she traced the carvings, her fingers trembling. "This place, it's the heart of the curse," she whispered. "The echoes of every soul trapped here." Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath their feet. From the shadows, ghostly figures emerged, twisted, anguished, and desperate. They reached out with translucent hands, their eyes hollow and full of sorrow. Sophie screamed as one apparition lunged toward her. Elena quickly stepped in, chanting a protective prayer that caused the spirits to recoil. Lucas's mark flared bright, and he felt a surge of energy coursing through him. "We must confront whatever holds this place together," he said. voice steady despite the fear. Together, the group moved deeper into the chamber, following a spiral staircase carved into the rock. The whispers grew into cries, but the explorers pressed on, determined to break the cycle. At the bottom, a massive stone altar awaited, inscribed with runes that pulsed with dark energy. Lucas approached, the mark glowing like a beacon. With a steady hand, he touched the altar. The chamber exploded with light, the echoes turning into a haunting melody that filled every corner. As the light dimmed, the ghostly figures slowly faded, their sorrow replaced with peace. The curse's grip weakened, but the journey was far from over. The light from the altar still shimmered faintly as the explorers ascended the spiral staircase, emerging into a narrow tunnel carved deep within the earth. This passage, known only in whispered legends as the Forgotten Path, was said to lead to the heart of the ancient temple, the final place where the curse could be lifted. The air was cooler here, and the scent of damp earth filled their lungs. Shadows danced along the rough stone walls, cast by their flickering torches. Petra paused, examining the faded glyphs etched into the rock. "These markings speak of a final trial," she said softly. "One that demands sacrifice, but not necessarily death." Lucas swallowed hard, the weight of his mark burning beneath his shirt. "We've come too far to turn back now," he said. As they pressed onward, a sudden chill swept through the tunnel. The whispers returned, softer this time, almost pleading. Sophie stopped, eyes wide. "Did you hear that? It's like they're begging us to stop." Elena gripped her amulet tightly. "The spirits know what's coming. We must stay strong." The path twisted and turned, opening into a cavern where the air shimmered with an eerie blue light. At the center stood an ancient pedestal, inscribed with symbols that pulsed with a strange energy. Lucas approached cautiously, feeling the mark flare with warmth. He reached out and touched the pedestal, causing the room to fill with a humming sound that vibrated through their bones. A voice echoed, deep and resonant. "To break the cycle, one must surrender that which binds them most." The explorers exchanged uneasy glances. What did the voice mean? What sacrifice was required? Before they could react, the ground beneath the pedestal cracked open, revealing a dark abyss. Petra stepped forward. "We have no choice but to descend." One by one, they began the slow climb down into the unknown, the final test of their courage and resolve waiting in the darkness below. The explorers began their cautious descent into the yawning abyss beneath the pedestal. The air grew colder and denser with every step, the only light coming from their flickering torches and the faint glow of Lucas's mark. The cavern walls were damp and rough, covered in strange mosses that seemed to pulse softly under their touch. The deeper they went, the heavier the silence became, broken only by the occasional drip of water echoing like distant footsteps. Shadows flickered on the walls, making it difficult to distinguish between stone and specter. Sophie shivered and clutched Elena's arm. "I feel like something's watching us." Elena nodded grimly. "We are not alone down here." Suddenly, the ground trembled again. A low rumble echoed through the cavern, followed by a crackling sound like breaking stone. The explorers froze, hearts pounding. From the darkness ahead, faint glowing eyes appeared, multiplying rapidly. A swarm of shadowy figures emerged, moving with unnatural speed and purpose. Lucas stepped forward, his mark blazing fiercely. "Stay together! Use the light!" Petra held up a small relic she had found earlier, a carved talisman that radiated a soft golden glow. The shadows recoiled from the combined light, but the swarm pressed closer, their whispers turning to growls. The explorers fought their way deeper into the cavern, using every ounce of courage and strength. The trial was testing them, pushing their fears and limits to the edge. As they reached a vast underground lake, the shadows suddenly halted. Across the water, a towering figure cloaked in darkness stood waiting, the final guardian of the ancient curse. Lucas tightened his grip on the talisman. "This ends here." The towering figure across the lake radiated an aura of ancient power. It moved slowly but with purpose, its eyes glowing a fierce red in the dim light. The explorers stood their ground, clutching their talismans and torches tightly. Lucas stepped forward, voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "We have come to break the curse and free the spirits trapped here. You cannot stop us." The figure's voice echoed like thunder through the cavern. "Many have tried and failed. None leave this place unchanged." Petra raised her relic higher, its golden light pushing back the shadows between them. "We're not like the others. We carry hope, and we carry the truth." With a roar, the Guardian lunged forward, the ground shaking beneath its feet. The explorers scattered, dodging blasts of dark energy that sizzled in the air. Sophie swung her torch, illuminating the Guardian's face, twisted and weathered, like stone cracked by time and sorrow. "We have to find its weakness." Elena's eyes scanned the ancient symbols carved into the walls. "The glyphs, they speak of light as the only weapon." Lucas nodded and raised his hand, the mark burning with a white-hot intensity. He stepped into the Guardian's path, feeling the weight of the entire expedition on his shoulders. With a sudden burst, the mark flared, flooding the cavern with blinding light. The Guardian shrieked, staggering back as the shadows peeled away to reveal a shattered figure beneath, the restless spirit trapped by the curse. The cavern began to tremble violently as the curse started to break. The explorers hurried back to the surface, hope blooming in their hearts. The nightmare was finally ending. The ground trembled beneath their feet as the ancient curse shattered into fragments of light, dissolving into the cool air of the cavern. The oppressive darkness that had gripped the place for centuries slowly lifted, replaced by a serene glow that seemed to breathe life back into the cold stone walls. Lucas led the group towards the cavern's exit, the talisman in Petra's hand still pulsing softly. The spirits, once trapped and tormented, now appeared as gentle silhouettes shimmering in the newfound light, their anguished faces softened with relief. Sophie whispered, "Are they finally free?" Elena smiled, her eyes glistening. "Yes, the curse is broken. Their souls can move on." As they stepped outside, the first rays of dawn painted the sky with the hues of pink and gold. The forest around the ancient ruins seemed to awaken from a long sleep, birds chirping as if celebrating the end of a long nightmare. Lucas took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the journey lift from his shoulders. "We did it. We've brought peace back to this place." But even in victory, a solemn silence lingered, a reminder of the lives lost and the price they had paid. The expedition was forever changed, their courage and sacrifice echoing in the whispers of the forest. As they gathered their belongings, Petra held the talisman close. "This is more than just an artifact. It's a symbol of hope." The team shared a glance, knowing their journey had ended not just with survival, but with the triumph of light over darkness. The journey back to the village was quiet, filled with a reflective calm after the harrowing ordeal. The forest, once oppressive and silent, now seemed alive with the gentle rustling of leaves and distant birdsong. The explorers moved steadily along the narrow path, each step carrying them further from the dark secrets of the cavern. As the village came into view, Lucas noticed the faces of the locals peering cautiously from behind curtains and doorways. Rumors of the cursed expedition had spread, and many feared the explorers' return. Petra stepped forward, holding the talisman high. "We have freed the trapped souls," she announced loudly. "The curse is lifted. There is no danger now." Slowly, the villagers emerged, their expressions shifting from fear to cautious hope. An elder woman approached, her eyes moist with gratitude. "Thank you for ending our suffering. For generations, this curse has haunted us." Lucas nodded solemnly. The spirits were bound by pain and anger, but now they can finally rest. Sophie smiled, the weight of the mission lifting from her heart. It's over, yet beneath the surface, a new sense of responsibility settled among the team, to protect the village from future threats and honor those who sacrificed so much. As night fell, the village gathered around a fire, sharing stories and songs. The bond between explorers and villagers grew stronger, united by the triumph over darkness. The calm of the village was soon interrupted by the arrival of unexpected visitors. One evening, as the explorers rested in the communal hall, a group of strangers appeared at the village entrance. They were rugged, with wary eyes and weathered faces, carrying strange equipment and ancient-looking scrolls. Lucas approached cautiously. "Who are you?" An older man, speaking with a thick accent, stepped forward. "We are from the Society of Antiquities. We have come seeking the same ruins you explored." Petra frowned, clutching the talisman. "Those ruins are dangerous. We barely escaped." The stranger smiled grimly. "Danger is part of discovery. We believe there is more to uncover. Secrets beyond your imagination." Elena exchanged uneasy glances with the team. "We have freed the spirits and ended the curse. What more do you want?" The man's gaze hardened. "Power. Knowledge. Some things are never truly at rest." That night, under the flickering firelight, the villagers and explorers debated fiercely. Could they trust these strangers? Would their curiosity reignite the darkness they had just sealed away? The explorers felt a heavy weight settle on their shoulders once again. The journey was far from over. The next morning, tension hung thick in the air. The newcomers insisted on joining the expedition to explore deeper into the ruins. Lucas hesitated but realized that denying them might cause conflict. After a heated discussion, the group reluctantly agreed. As they prepared to leave, Elena discovered a hidden chamber beneath the village temple. Inside, ancient symbols were etched into the stone walls, glowing faintly. Among them was a warning, written in a language only Petra could decipher. She translated quietly, "Beware the awakening. Those who disturb the resting place shall face a darkness beyond death." Lucas frowned. This warning, it wasn't in the texts we studied. The elder of the society smiled thinly. Many secrets are kept hidden from outsiders, perhaps for good reason. That night, unease settled over the camp. The explorers and newcomers alike felt the weight of unseen eyes watching them. The line between ally and enemy blurred as they prepared to venture into the unknown once more. With a mixture of caution and determination, the expanded group set off once more into the ruins' depths. The air grew colder as they descended, and shadows seemed to stretch unnaturally along the walls. Petra clutched the talisman tightly, whispering protective prayers. Lucas led the way, his torch casting flickering light on ancient carvings that had gone unnoticed before. Suddenly, a low rumble echoed through the cavern. Rocks shifted, and a narrow passage collapsed behind them, cutting off their retreat. Panic surged, but was quickly subdued by Elena's calm voice. "We move forward. No turning back." As they pressed deeper, strange markings appeared, symbols of unknown origin, pulsing with an eerie light. Sophie touched one and felt a cold shock run through her body. "It's like the ruins are alive," she whispered. The group pressed onward, united but wary, unaware that the true test of their courage was yet to come. The deeper they ventured, the heavier the silence became, broken only by their cautious footsteps and the distant drip of water. Suddenly, faint whispers seemed to echo from the shadows themselves, barely audible but chilling. Elena stopped, her heart pounding. "Did you hear that?" The newcomers exchanged nervous glances. "It's the voices of the past," the elder of the society muttered, "warning us to leave." Petra gripped her talisman tighter. "These whispers, they speak of betrayal and doom." Lucas raised his torch higher, trying to pierce the darkness. "We're close to the heart of the ruins. Whatever's here, it wants us to turn back." Sophie shivered. "But we can't. Not now." The group pressed on, the whispers growing louder, turning into agonized cries. Shadows danced on the walls, forming shapes that twisted and writhed like living nightmares. Elena's voice was steady but firm. "Remember why we came. We must see this through." As they reached a vast chamber, the source of the voices became clear. An ancient altar surrounded by spectral figures, their eyes hollow and accusing. The explorers faced their fears, and the next test of their courage had begun. The chamber was suffused with an eerie glow, the spectral figures circling the ancient altar in slow, mournful procession. Their hollow eyes seemed to pierce the living, filled with centuries of sorrow and rage. Lucas stepped forward cautiously. This altar, it must have been the center of their rituals. Petra studied the strange symbols carved into the stone. These markings speak of sacrifice, a price paid to appease a dark power. Elena's voice was steady, though her hands trembled. We need to understand what happened here to break the curse. Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing their torches. The spirit's whispers rose to a cacophony of cries and warnings. Leave this place, the voices demanded, but Sophie, moved by empathy, stepped closer to the altar. We are not here to harm. We want to heal what was broken. The spirits paused, their forms flickering uncertainly. Petra murmured an ancient prayer, her voice steady and clear. Slowly, the oppressive atmosphere began to lift, replaced by a fragile calm. The explorers realized that the path to salvation lay not in fear, but in understanding and respect for the past. With the oppressive tension easing, the group took a moment to regroup. The spectral figures had faded into the shadows, leaving behind an eerie stillness. Elena carefully examined the altar again, tracing the carvings with her fingers. These symbols tell a story, a tragic one. Lucas pulled out an ancient manuscript they had found earlier. According to this, a betrayal tore this community apart centuries ago. A leader sacrificed his people to a dark entity for power, dooming them all. Petra's eyes widened. That explains the curse. Their restless spirits trapped here, reliving their torment. Sophie looked around the chamber, feeling the weight of history pressing down on them. We have to find a way to break this cycle. Elena nodded. There must be a key hidden somewhere, a ritual or an artifact that can end the curse. The group split to search, each driven by the hope of salvation but shadowed by the looming dangers still lurking in the ruins. After hours of searching, Petra's sharp eyes caught a faint outline of a doorway concealed behind a thick wall of vines and dust. Here, she whispered urgently. The team gathered around as Lucas pushed aside the heavy foliage, revealing an ancient wooden door, its surface etched with the same mysterious symbols. Elena felt a chill as she placed her hand on the door. This must lead to the key, whatever can break the curse. With a collective effort, they forced the door open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. Sophie lit a torch, and one by one, the group stepped cautiously into the unknown. The air grew colder, the silence heavier. Strange echoes bounced off the stone walls as they descended. At the bottom, they found a small chamber filled with relics. A broken ceremonial dagger, faded scrolls, and an ornate box sealed with ancient runes. Lucas knelt to examine the box. This could be it, the artifact that ends the curse. Suddenly, a whisper brushed past them like a cold breeze. Beware, Elena raised her torch higher. We're not afraid. We will see this through. Lucas carefully examined the ornate box, feeling the weight of history pressing down on them all. The ancient runes seemed to shimmer faintly under the flickering torchlight. We need to break the seal carefully, Lucas said. Any wrong move could trigger a trap. Petra produced a small set of tools from her pack, her hands steady despite the tension. She began to work on the lock, slowly releasing the ancient mechanism. As the seal cracked open, a faint, chilling breeze swept through the chamber. The air grew heavy with the scent of earth and something metallic. Inside the box lay a small vial filled with dark liquid, a folded parchment, and a delicate amulet shaped like a twisted serpent. Elena carefully unfolded the parchment. The faded ink revealed a ritual, one that promised to cleanse the land and free the spirits. But it requires a sacrifice, Elena whispered, her eyes wide with both fear and resolve. Sophie glanced around the chamber nervously. Who among us is willing to do what it takes? A solemn silence filled the room as each member faced the weight of the choice. The weight of the decision hung heavily in the air. No one spoke for a long moment, each wrestling with the gravity of the ritual's demand. Elena stepped forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "I will do it. If this is what it takes to end the suffering and free the spirits, then I accept." Shock rippled through the group, but Elena's resolve was clear. Lucas nodded solemnly. "You are brave, Elena. We will support you." Petra and Sophie began preparing the chamber according to the ritual's instructions on the parchment. Candles were lit, ancient symbols traced in chalk, and the vial carefully placed at the altar. Elena took the amulet, feeling its cold metal pulse faintly in her hand. As the ritual began, the air grew thick with energy. Whispers echoed around them, voices from the past begging for release. The group joined hands, chanting the ancient words. A powerful light filled the chamber, and for a moment the spirits appeared, their faces peaceful at last. Then silence. Elena collapsed, exhausted but at peace. The curse was lifted. The chamber was bathed in a soft, warm light, a stark contrast to the cold gloom that had filled it moments before. Elena lay quietly, her breathing steady but weak. Around her, the team gathered, a mixture of relief and sorrow etched on their faces. Lucas gently shook her shoulder. "Elena, can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. "It's over," she whispered, a faint smile crossing her lips. Petra checked the vial, now empty, and the parchment, its ink no longer fading but glowing softly. "The curse is broken. The spirits are free." Sophie looked out towards the cave entrance. "The forest feels different, alive." As they climbed back to the surface, the heavy silence lifted. The bird song returned and the air seemed fresher, lighter. Outside, the sun was rising. The ancient shadows that had haunted the land for centuries were finally dispelled. Yet, in Elena's eyes, a quiet wisdom had settled, a knowledge of sacrifice, courage, and the mysteries beyond. Lucas looked at the team and nodded. "We came here searching for answers. We found more than we expected. The expedition had changed them all, forever." The journey back to the village was filled with a quiet reverence. The forest, once ominous and foreboding, now seemed peaceful, almost welcoming. As they approached the small settlement, villagers gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Word of the expedition's success spread quickly. Elders approached them with cautious smiles, grateful but wary. Lucas shared the story of the ritual and Elena's sacrifice. The villagers listened in silence, their eyes reflecting both sorrow and relief. An old woman stepped forward, placing a hand gently on Elena's shoulder. "You have done what many could not. The spirits will rest now." That night, the village held a ceremony to honor the fallen and celebrate the lifting of the curse. Lanterns floated into the sky, carrying prayers and hopes. Despite the losses, there was a renewed sense of hope and unity among the villagers and explorers alike. The darkness had been lifted, but the memory of the journey and the bravery it required would remain forever etched in their hearts. After returning to the village, the team rested, but their curiosity about the mysterious cave lingered. Elena, despite her exhaustion, felt compelled to explore further the ancient texts they had found in the chamber. Lucas and Petra carefully examined the glowing parchment, tracing the intricate symbols and writings. The script appeared to be a mix of old languages, fragments of Latin, Greek, and an unknown script no one could immediately decipher. Sophie suggested seeking help from a nearby university specializing in ancient history and linguistics. The team agreed, eager to uncover more about the curse's origins and the spirits they had freed. Before leaving, the village elder handed them a small, weathered book. "This belonged to the original guardians of the cave," he said. "It may hold answers to questions you haven't yet thought to ask." The book's pages were brittle, but filled with detailed illustrations and notes about rituals, guardians, and warnings about disturbing the balance between worlds. The journey was far from over. The team arrived at the ancient university, nestled in a misty valley, its towering spires and stone walls echoing centuries of knowledge. Professors greeted them with a mixture of skepticism and intrigue when presented with the glowing parchment and the weathered book. Dr. Helena Weiss, a renowned expert in ancient languages, carefully studied the texts. Over several days, she deciphered fragments revealing a forgotten tale of guardians who balanced the boundary between the living and the dead. The book spoke of a sacred ritual that maintained peace between worlds, a ritual disrupted by greed and fear, causing the curse to be born. Elena and Lucas listened intently, realizing the depth of the curse's origins. They discovered the spirits they encountered were once protectors, bound by duty but trapped by betrayal. The researchers warned that though the curse was lifted, lingering energies remained, a delicate balance that must be respected. Armed with new knowledge, the team prepared for the next phase of their journey, to restore that balance once and for all. Equipped with new knowledge and a deeper understanding, the team returned to the cave to perform the final ritual. The atmosphere was charged, the air thick with anticipation and residual energy. Elena led the ceremony, carefully following the instructions detailed in the ancient book. Lucas and Petra arranged protective symbols around the chamber while Sophie prepared the sacred offerings. As the ritual progressed, the cave seemed to come alive. Whispers echoed, shadows danced, and a soft light glowed from the depths. The spirits appeared, no longer restless or angry, but peaceful. They acknowledged the team's efforts in the restoration of balance. With a final surge of energy, a wave of calm washed over the cave. The curse was truly broken. Exhausted but relieved, the team left the cave, knowing they had fulfilled their mission and brought peace to a troubled place. Back at the village, the atmosphere was lighter. The once oppressive presence that had hung over the settlement seemed to have lifted, replaced by a newfound calm. The villagers gathered once more, this time to hear the explorers' stories and to share their own. Elena, Lucas, Petra, and Sophie found themselves embraced not just as strangers, but as heroes who had faced the darkness and won. In quiet moments, the team reflected on the journey. The losses they endured, the lessons learned, and the mysteries still left unsolved. The balance between worlds was fragile, and they understood that vigilance was necessary to keep the peace. But in the warmth of the village hearth, surrounded by new friends, they felt hope. They had stared death in the face and returned with stories of courage and light. Months passed, and the village flourished in the peaceful aftermath. But the story did not end there. Among the villagers, a quiet young woman named Amara had been deeply moved by the explorer's tale. Amara had always felt a connection to the unseen world, an intuition about the spirits and the balance between realms. Inspired by the team's courage, she began studying the ancient texts herself, dedicating her days and nights to learning the rituals and histories that once protected their land. She trained under the guidance of the village elder, absorbing knowledge about the sacred duties of the guardians. Amara's resolve strengthened. She knew the world was full of mysteries, some dark and dangerous, but with wisdom and courage, she could protect her people. She became the new guardian, the keeper of balance, a beacon of hope and protection for generations to come. One crisp autumn evening, as the village celebrated the harvest festival, strange figures appeared at the edge of the woods. Cloaked and silent, they watched the festivities from a distance. The villagers grew uneasy, whispering tales of old, strangers who came with unknown intentions. Amara felt a chill, sensing the fragile peace might be threatened once more. She approached the visitors, her voice steady but cautious. The cloaked figures revealed themselves as scholars from a distant land, seeking knowledge about the ancient curse and the recent events. They offered help, bringing new texts and artifacts that hinted at a larger, more complex mystery beyond the village's borders. Amara and the villagers debated whether to trust these strangers, but their curiosity and desire to protect their home pushed them to collaborate. Together, they prepared to delve deeper into the secrets that still lingered, unaware of the challenges ahead. The scholars' artifacts included a faded, cryptic map. It depicted not only the village and the cursed cave, but an entire network of hidden sites scattered across the region. Amara studied the map with intense focus, The symbols matched those she had seen in the ancient texts, hinting at a forgotten civilization that once guarded the balance between worlds. With the scholars' help, the team planned a new expedition, this time beyond the village, to uncover these scattered sites and understand their purpose. The stakes were higher than ever. The balance depended on uncovering these secrets before dark forces could harness them. Amara felt the weight of responsibility heavier than before, but the unity of the village and the scholars gave her hope. The journey ahead promised danger, discovery, and the chance to finally end the cycle of darkness. With supplies gathered and plans made, Amara, the scholars, and a select group of villagers set out at dawn. The air was crisp, and the forest greeted them with an eerie silence. The path led deeper into uncharted lands. Dense woods where sunlight barely pierced the canopy, and strange sounds echoed through the trees. As they traveled, Amara noticed symbols carved into rocks and trees, markers of the ancient civilization, guiding their way. Each step brought them closer to a forgotten temple, rumored to hold powerful relics that maintained the fragile balance. Tensions rose as strange phenomena began. Flickering lights, whispers in unknown tongues, and shadows moving just beyond sight. The group tightened their bonds, knowing that trust and courage would be their only protection against the unknown lurking in the dark. After days of trekking through the dense forest, the group finally arrived at a clearing. Before them stood the Temple of Whispers, a crumbling stone structure covered in vines, half swallowed by the earth itself. The air was thick with an unnatural silence. Amara felt the weight of centuries pressing down on them, the echoes of ancient rituals still lingering. Inside, faint voices seemed to murmur from the walls, words just beyond comprehension. The scholars cautiously documented carvings and symbols, revealing warnings and instructions for those who sought the temple's power. Suddenly, a low hum filled the air, growing louder and vibrating through the ground. The temple was awakening. Amara ordered the group to stay alert, knowing that the temple's ancient magic could be both a blessing and a curse. As they delved deeper, the line between reality and the supernatural began to blur, testing their resolve like never before. As the temple's hum intensified, the group found themselves facing a series of strange trials, illusions that tested their fears, regrets, and deepest secrets. Amara confronted visions of her past failures, each one threatening to break her spirit. The scholars wrestled with doubts about their knowledge and purpose. One by one, the villagers faced apparitions of lost loved ones and haunting memories, forced to reconcile pain and guilt. Through sheer will and the support of each other, they pushed forward, learning that the temple's trials were meant to prepare them for the ultimate challenge. At the heart of the temple, a glowing chamber awaited, rumored to hold the key to breaking the curse and restoring balance. But to claim it, they had to prove themselves worthy. After overcoming the temple's trials, the group entered the glowing chamber. At its center rested a sacred relic, an ornate amulet pulsing with ancient energy. Amara felt its power radiate through her, a tangible link to the forgotten civilization that had once maintained the world's balance. As she reached out to grasp the amulet, visions flooded her mind. Warnings of the cost of its power, but also hope for redemption. The scholars deciphered inscriptions revealing that the amulet could break the curse, but only if wielded by one pure of heart. The group understood their mission, to return the relic safely to the village and use its power to end the darkness once and for all. Yet, as they prepared to leave, a shadowy presence emerged, the final test guarding the relic's power. The shadowy presence loomed before them, a swirling mass of darkness, a manifestation of the curse that had plagued the land for centuries. Amara stepped forward, clutching the sacred amulet tightly. She felt the combined strength of the group's hope and determination fueling her. With a steady voice, she spoke words learned from the ancient inscriptions, words of binding and release. Light burst from the amulet, pushing back the darkness, illuminating the chamber with a radiant glow. One by one, the shadows dissipated, and the oppressive weight that had hung over the land lifted. Outside the temple, The forest seemed to breathe anew. Birds sang, and sunlight filtered warmly through the canopy. The group returned to the village as heroes, bringing with them not only the relic, but the promise of peace and renewal. Amara looked to the horizon, hopeful. The darkness was gone, but the lessons of the journey remained. Courage, trust, and the power of unity. The curse was broken, and a new dawn had arrived. As the first light of dawn broke through the dense canopy, the curse that had haunted the land for centuries was finally lifted. The shadows retreated, replaced by the warm glow of hope and renewal. The survivors of the expedition stood together, forever changed by what they had faced, bound by a newfound courage and unity. Their journey into the darkness had ended, but the story would live on, a reminder that even in the deepest shadows, light can prevail. Thank you for joining us on this haunting adventure. If you enjoyed this story and want to explore more mysteries and legends, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Your support helps us bring more thrilling tales to life. Until next time, stay curious and beware the shadows.